Now, we don't actually understand the value of Hindu civilization because we don't ask these questions critically. 70 years, all the greatest nations, the superpowers coming together with all the economic, political, intellectual muscle, they still are not able to hold it. It's not becoming Nitya. Now you think about this land called Bharatavarsha, which has been there for how many ever millennia? Take your pick. Some might say 5 millennia, some might say 7 millennia. The number does not matter. Fact is that this is a continuous living civilization with human experience of incredible geographic, ethnic, language diversity, which is all held together. We haven't wondered enough about how this one holds it. All of the experiments, whether you look at Europe or you look at US today, they're all talking about multiculturalism. Right? What is this idea of multiculturalism, the metaphors of melting pot, salad bowl, all of these things that we get? That there are different people and somehow you need to create some system where these people come together and become one. Right? Now, how do you do that? Either you have something called nation, which is why the American dream, the American life, the American nation, every nation, right? But Europe has also been formed, in fact, the whole of modern world has also been formed on ethnicities. What you call a modern nation state is what happened in Europe 400, 500 years ago, where nations were aligned with one ethnicity, basically skin color, language, race. People who spoke French became France. People who spoke German became Germany. So the nation state itself was organized around one vector. You see the challenge? They are primarily indexed on one vector and then they are trying to create unity through these mechanisms of social, political, civic. Now contrast that with India. To the European mind, this is exactly what happened during colonization. When they came here, they said this is not a nation because it has so many languages, because it has so many skin tones, because it has so many dialects, because it has so many different food cultures. They were only able to see the diversity because their mind was fractured and it was modeled around the ethnic identity as nation state. Whereas we were able to actually find a deeper spiritual principle of oneness. We are comfortable with diversity because we already discovered the oneness at a much deeper level. Once you discover the oneness at that level, you are not really threatened by diversity. You don't need to do a social experiment. You don't need to do a salad bowl. You don't need to do a multicultural project as a national project. Because in this land, what we call Bharatavarsha, what we call culture, why this is critical? Because this is the challenge organizations are facing when we talk about leadership. How do I blend a global workforce into one? You cannot do that on the basis of language. You cannot do that on the basis of nation. You cannot do that on the basis of one idea. And you're also telling people that bring your whole self to work. If they bring their whole self to work, they're also bringing their national and political self to work. And you cannot afford that. So this is a schizophrenia that organizations today live in because they haven't discovered a deeper principle of oneness. And that is why Hindu civilization has a blueprint and it has a fundamental need to be understood by the rest of the world. Because in this land, we figured out how to deal with diversity and harmonize diversity based on oneness principle. And what is that principle? How did it manifest? How did Northeast and somebody in Kanyakumari and somebody in Manipur, how will they connect? How does somebody in Kashmir connect? Why did Shankaracharya do what he did with the four corners? It's almost like he was drawing the modern boundaries of Bharatavarsha in some ways when he established those boundaries, right? What was he trying to do? Did he establish a skin color? Did he establish a race? Did he establish any other specific ethnic marker? No. He established the deeper principles that all of us as humans experience. Right? And that is the idea of karma, dharma, rata, rana, punarjanma. These are fundamental ideas that all of us can resonate with because that is the truth. That is our subjective truth. Right? So there are two ways or two factors that need to come together for any nation or for any collective to cohere, for them to come together. The first one is when you and I talk something, for us to feel a bond, we have to be able to share a universal. When I'm talking about love or contentment or joy, it has to be a universal that you are able to relate. But at the same time, it also has to be deeply personal. If it is only a universal at a cerebral spiritual level, we might act as if we partake in it, but we won't. Because we are not emotionally invested in it. only if I experience that love personally, only if I experience that contentment personally, will I be able to say, yes, I understand this. Bharatavarsha holds together as one civilization, and this is a global civilization, to be honest, right? It is anchored in the sacred geography of Bharata. This is where this thought has flourished, and there are reasons why it flourished here. We will get into that also. But this spirit of oneness, without this, you cannot actually deal with diversity. All of modern, you must be familiar with the diversity, equity, inclusion battles that are going on today. All the proliferation of genders, proliferation of narratives around that. All of that is basically conflict entrepreneurship. It's not Dharmic because it does not have any rooted principle. Because in this land we are able to talk about universals and deeply personal, then you are able to see that if I'm saying karma and if I'm doing this in Kanyakumari, if I'm saying namaste, I can do this in Kashmir, I can do this in Manipur, I can do this in Gujarat. Everybody understands it. Beyond language, beyond caste, beyond even religion in some senses. Although religion, the Abrahamic religions impose them not to believe it or not to practice it, the fact is that in Indian culture it's actually understood. Right? How is it understood? It is understood because our saints, our rishis who brought this civilization together, discovered those deepest truths of Satyameva Jayate Na Anritam and infused every single element of our life with it. Your sense of time through festivals, your sense of food through Ritucharya, your sense of occasions through your local deities, your sense of oneness through your community rituals, your sense of your own life through the Shodasa Samskara. Life has been organized this way. And look at the beauty. Every community has their own samskaras, but they're all universals. Because what is the fundamental human experience? Fundamental human experience is that we are born, at which case we are dependent. Therefore, we are born into not rights but debt. This is the Indian culture. You're born into debt because if you talk about right, then what is the right that you have as a child? Why should your parents look after you? You're born into a debt, and then you become capable of repaying that debt. You experience you, then you become a member that is able to contribute back. Look at the ashrama system, and then you move towards end of this life, and you come back till the time that you are in it, right? So this is the fundamental truth that all of us can talk about. There's no, whether you are an American, Brazilian, Costa Rican or Indian, the phases of life are similar. So the truth has to be aligned with this. What we call the Dharmic system, this mapping of Rita, universal rhythm, into socio-cultural political elements, is the ashrama system, is the Varna system. To understand your true nature, your Swabhava, align your Swadharma with it, and through that alignment of Swabhava and Swadharma, help you be guided through this life from one avastha to another avastha, from one ashrama to another ashrama, from Balya to Yuva to Vanaprastha to Sannyas. This is what we call culture. This is the deeper aspect of culture that we need to bring out for the world today. Otherwise, culture has been reduced to shibboleths, to ornamentations, to real platitudes. I'm a foodie. What does it mean to say I'm a foodie? Being a foodie is not a culture. It's actually a disease, right? Because it's untrue. It's not. Similarly, all of these things that are neologisms which are given to us as culture is actually what. So our work at Brihat, when we talk about culture and culture, sacred culture being the guiding post for public policy, for cultural storytelling, for creative arts, is that how do all these interfaces that we have in the Hindu society. The Western society has unfortunately removed and obliterated the loops between the individual and the state. They are only left with three dimensions: the market, which is the primary force; the state, which is there to serve the market; and the individual. They don't have communities. They have rifle associations. They don't have Kula Jati movements. They don't have common deities. They don't have anything that fulfills a spiritual aspiration. But human is human, whether you are an American or an Indian, you have spiritual aspirations. And what you're witnessing, the rapid pendulum-like swings that you see in American politics today. 10 years ago, there was no wokeism. Suddenly, wokeism was the religion. Today, somebody comes, dismantles that entire structure. So there is a new religion. All of these things indicate that there is no fundamental truth. and therefore you swing wildly based on whatever latest fad consumes you. Maybe sometimes it was, at a previous time it was capitalistic idea, then it was neo-capitalism, then it was, whatever neoliberal ideas. Today it is cultural Marxism, and then once again back to what we're calling the right-wing politics. It just shows you that within the span of small 70, 80 years, you're swinging, the culture and society is swinging like a pendulum. That shows that there is no anchor. Why we need to talk about Hindu culture, why we need to talk about Indian civilization, is because it provides the anchor of stability to the rest of the world. Because it goes to the fundamental human nature. It answers the fundamental human questions. So what we do, because in Indian society, it's not just market, state, and individual. You have society, you have sacred. Fundamentally, it draws from the sacred institutions. Our mathas, our sampradayas, our festivals, our rituals. This is how people make sense of life. My mother, even today, calls me up and says tomorrow is Ekadashi. Something else, there is something called Sankara Chaturdashi. Time is actually measured by, okay, what is the sacred activity that needs to be done at this point? That is how people have made sense of life in this. And that gives your life a structure. Otherwise, there is just rootlessness. There is just nihilism, which is where we are, unfortunately, even in India, the next generation is heading there because this is the culture that we are importing. Right? So what we do at Brihat is to help people understand that our culture, our civilization is a moral, empathetic, and an intellectual inheritance that we all have. It does not matter what your caste is. It does not matter what your language is, what your region is. It is the common Hindu civilizational inheritance that we have. Now, how do we make sure that we understand this and bring it